Okay, the last video got a little bit long, so we're going to really quick recap: order of operations, parentheses or grouping symbols, exponents, multiplication and division, addition and subtraction. Now we're going to go through some examples of those problems. Okay, running through a couple of examples. For the first one, we do order of operations, so in parentheses first. Now, if I look at these parentheses, I don't have any math to do inside of the parentheses. This is simply multiplication, the 4 parentheses 3. So when I look at this, this is 20 plus 4 times 3 minus 17. Order of operations tells me I need to do multiplication first. So 4 times 3 gives me 12. Drop down everything you don't use. So the 20 plus and the minus 17. 20 plus 12 is 32. Drop down the minus 17. 32 minus 17 is 15. And that's my answer. Next one gets a bit more complicated. 6 squared minus 24 divided by 2 squared. When I say squared, I mean to the second power. Times 3 minus 1. So I don't have any parentheses or grouping symbols, so I'm going to move on to exponents. So 6 squared, 6 times 6 gives me 36. I'm going to drop down the minus 24 divided by, and then I'm going to do my 2 squared, which is 2 times 2, which is 4. Drop down the times 3 and the minus 1. After exponents, I multiply and divide from left to right. So I'm going to go from this side over to this side. Here I'm subtracting 36 minus 24, so I'm not going to do that yet. And then I'm dividing 24 by 4. So I'm going to drop down my 36 minus 24 divided by 4 is 6. Drop down my times 3 minus 1. Next I'm going to do multiplication. So 36 negative 6 times a positive 3 is negative 18, and drop down minus 1. 36 minus 18 is 18. Drop down the minus 1, and my answer is 17. So I want you to pay close attention to the difference between the 2 times 5 squared and the 2 times 5 squared, which sounds exactly the same until you say quantity, 2 times 5 squared. Remember, you always do the stuff in the parentheses first. So this is 2 times 5, which is 10. And I don't really need the parentheses, but I just wrote them in there, so I'm going to take those out. 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100. On the other hand, here I have 2 times 5 squared. Inside the parentheses is only 5, so that's really only for multiplication purposes. So this is 2 times 5 squared. So I'm going to do 5 squared first, which is 25. Drop down the 2. 2 times 25 is 50. On the next one, I am going to have to write really small because I don't think I left myself enough room. But I need to have a common denominator on these. So the first thing I'm going to do is inside the grouping symbols or inside the parentheses. Here I have nothing going on inside the parentheses. Here I also have nothing going on inside the parentheses. But here I need to subtract this before I can move on to exponents. So 1/2 and 3/4, I need a common denominator which I can make as 4. So I can multiply the 1/2 by 2 over 2. So I have 2 over 4. So 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, minus 3 over 4, and then squared. Drop down everything else. 1/2 to the third, and then times negative 4. So now I need to actually do that. So 2 minus 3 is negative 1 over 4 squared. Again, drop down everything else. Next, I'm going to do my exponents. So 1/2 to the third power, if I look at 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1, and 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So this is going to be 1 over 8, and then minus, hang on, 1/4 squared, or negative 1/4 squared, is negative 1/4 times negative 1/4. So we know that's going to be positive. 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 times 4 is 16. So 16, 1 over 16. This negative stays there because that was already there to begin with. And then times negative 4. All right. So the next thing I need to do is erase that so it's clear that that is a 1 over 16. I am subtracting 1/8 minus 1/16 times 4. Now, because I'm doing that, I need to multiply first. So negative 4 times negative 1/16 is going to be positive 4 over 16. So I'm going to bring this up over to the other side. So 1/8 minus, actually it's going to be plus because I have minus negative 4 over 16. And now I can change 1/8 to 2/16 by multiplying both the bottom and the top by 2 to get a common denominator of 16. So 4/16. So 2 plus 4 is 6 over 16. Both of those are divisible by 2, so that equals 3. 3 over 8. And that's as far as I can go with that one. So that one was quite a lot of steps, and a lot of these are. It's just important to deal with them one step at a time and remember to keep to that order of operations. Always start with your grouping symbols. And a lot of people try to skip steps and do a lot at one time, and I want you guys to really, really focus on showing all that work in between so that you can keep simplifying it and keep simplifying it. And I know the fractions tend to freak people out, but once you get practiced with them, it gets a whole lot easier. Okay, just a few more examples. When we did the order of operations stuff, one of the things I told you all was that when you have something like this where you have the entire thing divided by an entire something else, then you want to simplify those separately, the top and the bottom. So I'm going to go kind of horizontally instead of the usual vertically. Actually, maybe not. Nope, just kidding. So I'm going to deal with the top first. Actually, kind of concurrently. Sorry, I keep screwing up. I'm going to kind of deal with it all together, but I'm not going to do any dividing of the top by the bottom until the very end. So I start with parentheses and my grouping symbols. So 3 minus 12 gives me a negative 9, so I'm going to drop down everything else. So 2 times negative 9 plus 6 times 4 divided by 2 to the 4th plus 1. My next step is exponents. 2 to the 4th is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 2 times 2 is 4 times another 2 is, sorry, 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8 times 2 is 16. So 2 to the 4th is 16. So 2 times negative 9 plus 6 times 4. So that's just me dropping down this from here to here. And then 16 plus 1. Then you do multiplication and division. I'm not going to do division until the very, very end. So 2 times negative 9 is negative 18, plus 6 times 4 is 24, and then 16 plus 1. So now I have addition and subtraction on both the top and the bottom. I'm going to bring that up over there. Negative 18 plus 24. 24 minus 18 is 6. And 16 plus 1 is 17. And then normally I would divide the top by the bottom, but 17 is a prime number. Obviously 6 is not divisible by 17, and I can't reduce this fraction any further. So that is my answer on this one. The next one, evaluating x equals -5. So I'm going to substitute in -5 for x. This gets a little bit tricky with the negative, so be very, very careful that you drop everything down the same. This negative here is going to stay at the next step. In place of x, I'm going to put parentheses -5 squared minus 4, and then instead of x, -5. So now I need to look at the order of operations. Inside my grouping symbols, or my parentheses, I don't have anything going on except for that -5, so this is just multiplication there. The next step is the exponents. So -5 squared is -5 times -5, which is a positive 25. I need to drop down everything I didn't use, which includes this negative. So this is -25 minus 4 times -5. Next thing I'm going to do is multiplication. -4 times -5 is a positive 20. And I'm going to drop down my -25. Finally, I'm going to add -5 plus 20, which gives me a -5, because the difference between 25 and 20 is 5. 25 is negative, so it's going to be -5. Finally, simplifying an algebraic expression. So I need to start with my grouping symbols, and within these brackets, I need to simplify this whole thing as much as I can first and deal with the rest of it later. So x squared minus 2, I can't do anything with that part, so what I'm going to do is distribute this 6. So 6 times x squared is 6x squared. 6 times -2 is -12. Drop down my plus 5. Then I have, I can't do anything with the 6x squared, so -12 plus 5 is -7. So I have 6x squared minus 7. So that's just simplifying this part right here. And I can't do anything else with that. So what I'm going to do is take this part that I didn't use and drop it down to this step. I'm going to work backwards. So I just took this whole thing and brought it down to that step. The next thing I'm going to do is try to get rid of these parentheses, so I'm going to deal with that negative. Remember that a negative outside the parentheses changes everything inside to a positive. So, just kidding. Changes everything to the opposite of what it was. So if I have a negative 6x squared minus 7, this becomes a negative 6x squared and a positive 7, because a negative times a negative. And I'm going to drop everything else down. This 4 plus 18x squared. And then I need to combine my like terms. I have an 18x squared and a negative 6x squared. So 18 minus 6 gives me 12x squared. 4 plus 7 gives me 11. And because both of those are positive, I'm going to be adding that. And that's as far as I can go, because an x squared doesn't combine with an 11. And that's my answer on that particular problem. Your homework. Now this looks lengthy, as usual, but I also want to point out that these problems are pretty quick. It's where you get into the more challenging ones here. Make sure you don't have the tendency to do the early ones and then skip the later ones, because those are the ones you're really going to be tested on, is how well you know that information. So that is section 1.8, exponents in order of operations. We will be reviewing next class and testing the following one. So thank you very much.